Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So Nebula was the first, what we call a full stack cloud networking solution that was designed for SMB. Before Nebula, we are not the first cloud managed solution out there. Meraki was out there ahead of us, Aerohive was out there ahead of us, but both of those were aimed primarily at the enterprise market. They weren't really aimed at the smaller office sizes that Nebula is targeting. So we launched this all the way back in 2016, and we've been constantly working on improving the interface, improving the features, and improving the functionality since. We support more than 61 products now. I want to say we're getting close to 90 products if we look at the total global products that are available, not just those in North America. So Nebula is made up of some primary components here. The main one that we're going to be talking about here is Nebula Control Center. Nebula Control Center is our back end. It's hosted in the AWS cloud, and that's what you use to deploy, manage, configure, and update all of your equipment out in the field. And then that's tied to the equipment itself. So right now we have the Nebula agent built into our security gateways, our switches, our access points, and we also have the Nebula mobile app that's designed to be a tool for your installers to make it really easy to add devices to your or your customers' networks. So the idea behind Nebula is to save you time and simplify the process of deploying a brand new network. You can see on this slide here, this is everything that goes into deploying the network. With Nebula, we're able to reduce or eliminate a number of these steps or the time that you're spending on those steps. So for instance, deploying or installing equipment is simplified because all you need to do is physically install it and plug it in. As long as it has power and an internet connection, everything else is automatically handled in the cloud. You use the cloud to monitor equipment, so you don't need to worry about configuring and setting up monitoring equipment or a monitoring platform. You don't need to set up remote access to your site through VPN or port forwards to be able to remotely access your site. We store automatically all the logs for you up in the cloud, and we make it really easy to push out configuration changes and update firmware. So all of this combined saves you a lot of time and a lot of money. So we'll start going through some of the main features here, as kind of alluded to here. We can get you up and running with a new network in just a few minutes. Nebula's got a number of wizards and tools in there that make it really easy to get stuff up and running in just a few minutes with basic configuration, and then you can go in and tweak things from there. There is no need to unbox your equipment to start configuring it. You can start setting up your Nebula sites before you've even finalized which hardware you're going to get. A number of the settings and configurations are available as soon as you create a new site in the Nebula interface. Once you do get the equipment, we have a QR code on the outside of the box. So you simply scan that QR code and then assign the device to a customer site. And then you ship it on to this customer site for installation. There's no need to take it out of the box. So you can have the equipment shipped to your office, scan it in, assign it, and then forward it on to the customer site for actual hardware installation. Now, the Nebula clients are built into our hardware already. There is nothing else you need to buy, set up, or install. So there's no cloud keys, there's no local wireless LAN controllers, there's no CNC or CNA devices, there's no virtual machines that set up, there's no special software that you need to put on your PC. Everything is done through a standard web browser interface on your computer or using our mobile app. And the idea behind it is to give you access basically to your customers' networks anywhere you have access to the internet. Some of the default features that are included with Nebula include guest access, whether it's controller-based or access point-based, gateway-based or access point-based. We've got built-in captive portal, and we've got a lot of flexibility when it comes to how you are doing your captive portal. We can have users log in with a username and password. We can have users just simply agree to the terms of service before they get onto the guest network. We can have them log in with their Facebook accounts. So there's a lot of flexibility with how we do that with the free version here of Nebula. So it gives you a lot of flexibility whether you are, just providing guest net access at an office for vendors who may be visiting, or whether you are deploying a public access hotspot at like a coffee shop or something like that. When it comes to wireless, with Nebula, you get free smart mesh. So if you have access points you need to deploy, but you can't bring Ethernet cables to them, we can mesh those together, and they will mesh back and find until they find another access point that has a physical wired connection. And this feature is really nice not only for when you're intentionally planning to deploy meshes, but also for those situations where for some reason the Ethernet connection to one of your access points goes down. Maybe it gets unplugged, maybe an installer cut something by mistake. You can set up your network to automatically switch into mesh mode if it determines it has lost the physical connection. Nebula gives you, of course, full access to WPA2 and WPA3 enterprise security, being paired with 802.1x and a radius server for user authentication, and we support all of the industry standards for fast roaming. On the switch side of things, we give you access to features such as our intelligent PoE management, where rather than using the standard 802.3 AT or AF or BT class-based system, we can intelligently monitor connected devices, find out what their true power load is, and free up the rest of the power budget to be applied towards other devices. So you can put more devices in the same switch without exceeding your power budget. We give you access to things like, VLANs, obviously, 802.1x authentication, loop guard, DHCP server guard, etc. on those switch ports. And all of our switches are going to virtually stack, allowing you to configure ports across multiple switches simultaneously. All updates are done through the cloud, so any configuration changes you make in the cloud will automatically be pushed out to your customer site to those devices. When it comes to firmware management, we've got some flexibility in there in scheduling when those firmware updates are done, so you don't have to worry about the network going down during a busy period during a firmware update. You can simply schedule it to be done in the middle of the night or on a weekend, and it'll be done automatically for you. You don't need any user intervention beyond that point. On the gateway side of things, we've designed to make doing VPNs really easy. If you're configuring site-to-site VPNs between Nebula locations, you simply go in, choose the sites you want to link together, choose whether you want star or hub topology, hit apply, and we'll take care of all the rest for you. For end users VPNing back into the office, we've got a great script configuration, which will automatically configure the built-in VPN clients on Windows PCs, Macintosh PCs, and iOS devices. Simply go in, set it up, put in the email address of the end user, and it will email the end user a script that they can run that will handle the configuration for them. So Nebula was designed from the ground up for the idea that you have multiple customers. Each of those customers may have multiple sites. So we've designed Nebula with that in mind to make it really easy for you to keep an eye on what's going on in all of the different networks that belong to your customers, and make it really easy to switch between sites and networks when you're doing this. So for instance here, when you click on one of your customers, you'll get this view here. You can get a breakdown of all the different sites that customer may have and a quick snapshot of what's going on those sites. Simply choose one of the sites and it takes you to the site dashboard here. So this is giving you a view of what is going on your customer's network. These widgets here on the screen are configurable, which ones are there, so you can remove ones you don't use, add ones that you may use. But some of the things you can see here just at a quick glance is, how many devices are online versus offline, how many wireless users are on your network, what your PoE utilization is versus the available PoE budget. If you're using one of our gateways, you can see things here like which applications are using up most of your bandwidth, which users are using up most of your bandwidth, things that the security report has caught, etc. We've got pull-down menus. It's kind of hard to see in the screenshot up here at the top, to make it really easy for you to jump between customers or switch between sites. Simply drop down the pull-down menu, select the customer, select the site, and you'll automatically be taken there. This is also the interface you use for configuring your devices. Over here on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got the various different settings here that you can go to. You've got your organization, your site settings, and then you can break things down by switch, gateway, or access point. So on the wireless LAN side of things, this is one of the views we've got here for you. It shows you your wireless users, both those that are currently connected and those that aren't connected. And again, which columns show up here is all user selectable by you. So you can see the information you want and hide the information you don't care about. But you can see things like whether the user is currently connected or not, which AP they're connected to, which SSID they're connected to, how strong their connection is at the access point level, whether it's strong or weak, what speed that connection is, what brand of wireless NIC they're using, all sorts of other information like that. And we also plot usage over time for you to keep an eye on. On the switch side of things here, you'll see we make it really easy by just glancing at the top of the page here. You know, which ports are currently plugged in and used, which ports are providing PoE power versus those that aren't, and which are gigabit versus slower, 100 or 10 megabit connections at a quick glance here. And then again, you can see here plotted over time what's going on as far as utilization of your switches in those ports. Configuration of ports is pretty simple. Again, you'll get a visualization here of all of the ports across all of your switches. You can then select multiple ports, choose configure, and you'll get taken to this view here where you can quickly simultaneously apply things like VLAN settings, bandwidth settings, things like that. So Nebula itself is free. So there is no extra fees to use Nebula to manage your Zyxel equipment. We have no limitation on the number of customers you can manage in Nebula. We have no limitation on the number of devices you can manage in Nebula. So we do offer some paid services which unlock additional features, but the core Nebula functionality is free. All right, here I'm getting some weird error messages on my computer, hopefully not related to the webinar. So that's something that sets us apart from a lot of the other cloud managed solutions out there. Pretty much all of them these days do require a paid subscription to use them, and if you don't pay that subscription, you lose the ability to manage your devices. Not so with Nebula. So when you're looking at our Nebula products, you will see most products these days are called Nebula Flex. Now, when we first rolled out Nebula back in 2016, we sort of followed the Meraki model where some models you managed traditionally, and then if you wanted cloud management, you had to buy specific models that supported cloud management. So we've essentially gotten rid of that at this point, and just about everything that works with Nebula is going to fall under Nebula Flex. So what Nebula Flex tells you when you look at it is that this hardware can be managed in the cloud, or it can be managed directly in the traditional method, logging directly into the device either via GUI or CLI to configure it, or using SMP or something like that. So we have the ability for you to use the same hardware, and depending on the customer's deployments and your needs for management, you can use that same hardware in either mode. And it's really easy to switch between cloud managed and non-cloud managed. If you've got a device and you want to manage it in the cloud, you simply add it to your customer's site, and that device will automatically reboot and connect to Nebula in cloud mode. If you decide you no longer want to manage it in the cloud, you simply remove it from your inventory in the cloud, and it'll automatically reboot into standalone mode. Now, one key thing to mention here is that configurations don't get translated between standalone and cloud mode. So when you switch modes, you will have to reconfigure the device. You will also see some products here labeled as Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro products include 1 year of our professional pack. That is a paid upgrade to Nebula, which unlocks some additional features that we'll talk about here in a few minutes. In the case of our access points, it's a little bit different. It's the same thing. You are getting the 1 year of professional pack bundled with the device. But also our Nebula Flex Pro APs are the only APs we have that can be managed with a local controller. So if you're not using the cloud, but you do want to do controller-based management, you'll still be looking for Nebula Flex Pro products. So here's a breakdown of our different products these days. So you'll see here on Nebula Flex, it's our NWA 1 and 2 series access points, our new 50 and upcoming 90 series. Those will all be Nebula Flex, so they can be managed in the cloud or standalone. On the switch side of things, that is our 1920 V2, our XS 1930, and our XGS 1930 series. And on our security gateways, that is our USG Flex series and our USG 20s. So those can all be, dual mode. You can either manage them in the cloud or do it standalone or direct. On the Pro side of things, it is our 5 and 6 series access points, things like our WAC 650S, our NWA 5123 ACHD, WAC 500s, etc. On the switch side of things, that is our GS 1350 series, our GS 2220 series, and our XS 3800 series. And then on the gateways, it is going to be our USG Flex products, which come bundled with a year worth of our UTM services. So if you're buying the standalone USG Flex, no Nebula license is included. If you are buying the USG Flex series with UTM services bundled, that bundle also includes 1 year of Nebula Pro Pack. And then on our ATP series, Pro Pack is bundled with the Gold license, which comes with those units. So we'll talk here a little bit about Nebula licensing now. So there's 3 options when it comes to the Nebula Control Center. You have the base pack, which is the free version of Nebula. We have our Plus Pack and our Pro Pack. So the Pro Pack is our most popular option. It unlocks a lot of features that are really aimed at those of you that are providing managed services to your clients. And then the Plus Pack is something that we launched just last year, and it's designed to compete with those lower-end cloud-managed offerings from companies like TP-Link or Netgear. So we'll talk here a little bit about each of those in just a minute, but first I want to talk about how licensing is handled. So every device on a customer organization needs to have a license to be able to unlock those features. So if you have 30 devices on your customer's network and you've only got 29 Pro Pack licenses, the device will continue to operate in free mode until you add that additional license. Same goes with Plus Pack. So if you want to use Plus or Pro, every device on the network needs to have one of those licenses assigned to it. If a license expires, you have a 15-day grace period to renew the license and add a new license on there before your network drops back into the free mode. So I hope that's clear. Let's go through here some of the feature differences between the modes. So again, if we're looking at the number of devices or the number of customers that can be managed, it's the same across all. It's unlimited across all of those licenses. All of our licenses have that zero-touch auto-deployment, where you simply add the device to your customer's network. It'll automatically put itself into Nebula mode, and it'll automatically download the configuration it needs for that customer's site. All versions can give you free over-the-air firmware management and basic firmware scheduling for updates. All of them give you access to our iOS and Android apps. One of the areas here where we're starting to see some differences is when it comes to the log information. The free version of Nebula stores 24 hours worth of logs in the cloud. Plus Pack stores a week's worth of logs in the cloud, and the Pro Pack gets you a year's worth of logs stored in the cloud. Another difference here is when it comes to admin accounts, and this is per organization. So with the free version of Nebula, you can have 5 different admin accounts per organization. Plus Pack bumps that up to 8. Pro Pack removes the limitation entirely. We do offer a cloud authentication server. You can use this for 802.1x authentication. You can use this for hotspot authentication. You can use it for MAC filtering. You don't have to. We obviously still support 802.1x. So if you're using 802.1x, this is kind of a moot point. But if you want to use our cloud authentication server, The free version gets you 50 entries into that server, so 50 MAC addresses or 50 username and password combinations. Plus Pack doubles that to 100. Pro Pack removes the cap entirely. So now giving you access to network function scheduling, things like scheduling PoE, SSIDs, firewall rules. That's available on all versions of Nebula. Doing 802.1x and MAC-based authentication is available across all versions of Nebula. Captive portal authentication is available on all versions here. And your core, main settings for all of your devices are available in the free version here. So now we'll talk about some features that are exclusive to Plus and Pro Pack. Advanced firmware scheduling, that does require a Plus or Pro Pack. Now again, the free version does let you schedule firmware updates. By going to Plus or Pro, it allows you to create schedules based on the type of device. So you can put in a different schedule for access points versus your switches, for instance. The advanced firmware scheduling also lets you schedule based on individual device. So you can schedule specific devices to upgrade at different times from the rest of the devices on the network. We give you access to advanced reporting functions, such as the ability to automatically generate reports, to email those reports either to yourself or your customers to keep an eye on what's going on in the network. If you are emailing those reports to your customers, we can add your logo information or your logo into those reports. So that is something that's part of Plus and Pro Pack. We also have an automatic network topology view. We'll automatically create a visual representation of your network and which devices are connected to which other devices, which is a nice tool to use sometimes when you're troubleshooting a network, especially some of the bigger networks or a network where maybe you haven't touched it in a while and you've forgotten how things are set up. So that's something that's exclusive to Plus and Pro Pack. The ability to send email alerts, that is something that is on Plus and Pro Pack. So that's things like if a device goes offline for a certain period of time, you can get an email alert letting you know, hey, this customer's network WAN just went down, or some of their APs just went offline. So that's a Plus or a Pro Pack feature. And then when it comes to guest use, if you want to do Wi-Fi vouchers, where you sort of generate a username and password that's good for a certain period of time, that's something that requires Plus or Pro Pack. And now the rest of the features here are things that are exclusive to the Pro Pack. So one of those features is an audit log. Basically, we track every configuration change and which admin user made those configuration changes and store it for up to a year. So again, a nice tool when you're troubleshooting things or trying to figure out why something is set up a certain way. You can see which of your admins made that change and then track them down and ask them. Pro Pack unlocks the ability to do organization-wide configuration syncs, the ability to clone organizations, and to create templates to more easily push out configuration changes. The ability to back up your configurations and restore them. The ability to automatically open a ticket directly with our headquarters for Nebula support. Advanced radius AAA services. Again, this is more of a hotspot feature. It also unlocks things like Facebook Wi-Fi, which is different than Facebook login. It unlocks the ability to do dynamic VLAN assignment, where users connect to the same SSID, but based on their password, you can assign them different VLAN settings. Pro Pack also unlocks things here like advanced Wi-Fi controls. So it gives you access to things like being able to set up per AP RSID settings. So basically, the ability on a per AP basis to set, how strong a signal needs to be before you disconnect that user and hopefully force them to roam to a closer AP. The ability to use our Wi-Fi health monitoring and our AI machine learning to automatically adjust some Wi-Fi settings to improve Wi-Fi connectivity. On the switches, Pro Pack unlocks things like the ability to do port-based bandwidth control, the ability to have VLANs automatically assigned based on MAC addresses of the connected device, static routing on our layer 3 switches, advanced IPTV features. So a number of things there which may or may not be beneficial to you, which are Pro Pack exclusives. I just went through these. I guess I should have waited for these slides. My bad. I got ahead of myself there. So this is just going through those same features I just talked about that are exclusive to the Pro Pack or to the Plus and Pro Pack. We'll skip through them here since I already talked about most of these. I will stop on this slide though. This is just showing you here what our report here that's unlocked using the Pro Pack gets you on the Wi-Fi. As you can see, we track users over time and the quality of their connection. And we have some settings here that we can automatically have Nebula change for you based on what's going on here using our advanced artificial intelligence / machine learning, whatever term you prefer to use for that. As well as just a general idea to see, which users are having issues on your network. It can come in handy in cases where you are troubleshooting like hospitality networks where maybe users aren't necessarily complaining about things, but you can go through here and see, okay, wait a minute, I've got some users with issues. All of these users were staying in room 214. Something's wrong in 214. Maybe we need to add another access point. Maybe we need to move the access point in the hallway a little bit closer, things like that. Skipping through some of these, here's the automatic topology view we talked about earlier. So there is one other type of Nebula license that we have, and that is our MSP Pack license. So the MSP Pack license is, unlike the regular Nebula Control Center licenses, which are based on the devices on a customer's organization, the MSP license is tied to an individual admin account. So these features are unlocked for the admin account that has the license associated with it. Other admin accounts will not have access to these features. So one of the things the MSP license unlocks for you is this thing that we call MSP View. So this is a view which shows you all of your customers in a single view and gives you a quick summary of what's going on with them, how many sites they have, how many devices they have, how many of those devices are currently offline or have been experiencing connectivity issues, whether those sites are free version of Nebula, the paid version of Nebula, and if paid version of Nebula, if they've expired recently and are now on the 15-day grace period. So it's a nice, easy way to see what's going on across all of your customers at once. It also unlocks some other features here for you. One of them is MSP branding. So you can rebrand the Nebula interface with your logo, and you can remove our contact information and put your company's contact information on there. It also gives you some tools to make it easier to manage multiple admin accounts by being able to group them together in teams and handle assigning teams to individual customers or sites rather than having to do it manually one at a time. So it simplifies things. If one of your admins leaves, you simply remove them from the team and it automatically removes them from all of the sites that team is assigned to, etc. And it gives us the ability to synchronize certain settings across multiple customers. So again, something from an MSP side of things where you've got a lot of customers and you need to, change some of your own rules on the back end, you can do that automatically across multiple orgs without having to go into each one individually. Another thing the MSP Pack now does is it allows you to get email alerts from all of the organizations that your admin account is on, even if those admin accounts are the free version of Nebula. So if you've got a lot of customers and the only Plus Pack feature you're really interested in is those email alerts when a device goes offline, you can simply buy one MSP Pack, and now all of your organizations that you have access to have the ability to do email alerts. So that is it as far as true Nebula licenses go. Again, you've got your Nebula Control Center license, you've got the free version, you've got Plus or Pro, and then on the admin accounts, you have the ability to add the MSP license to unlock some of those MSP management-oriented features to make things a little bit simpler for you when it comes to managing a lot of customers. Now, there are some other licenses that we have here that are in Nebula but aren't really a part of Nebula. So the first one I want to talk about here is our UTM services, right? So if you are using our security gateways, many of them offer UTM services, things like antivirus, content filtering, anti-spam, that are run and handled by the security gateway. So for those, we've got a couple different licenses, right? So if you're using one of our older NSG gateways, those were the dedicated Nebula-only gateways. We have an NSS Security Pack license you can buy, which are an annual subscription. If you are using our USG Flex, we have UTM licenses available. If you're using an ATP gateway, Nebula is tied into the gold license that you buy for those. We also have a feature that our security gateways offer, which is called Secure Wi-Fi. So this is something that's available on our USG Flex and ATP series. It is something that's offered both in Nebula and in standalone mode. And it's called Secure Wi-Fi. And what it basically does is it allows you to convert an access point into a VPN appliance. So that's one of the problems we have now, right? Is we have all these workers working from home, either full-time or part-time. How do you securely get them access to your corporate network? Now, obviously, one of the ways to do that is, most operating systems and devices have a built-in VPN. You can go in and configure each individual device, but that often requires, the user bring their device into the office, so you can set it up and verify it's working before they go home. And you may run into problems with their home router blocking it somehow. The other way is, you buy a security VPN appliance, but again, you run into the same issue. They've probably already got a router at home, so now you're having them put another gateway behind their existing gateway. You can get double natted and run into some other issues. Or secure Wi-Fi. You take a Nebula managed AP and you give it to them. You buy the secure Wi-Fi license for it. And basically, it will give you a Nebula, or in the case of standalone, gateway managed SSID, which requires 802.1x authentication to connect to it, and you give it to the user to take home. It is not a gateway. It is not doing that, so it simply plugs into the customer's existing home network. You just plug directly into that Comcast router that you've got, and it will connect to the cloud, configure itself, and then it makes what's essentially a VPN connection between that SSID and your USG Flex or ATP back at your corporate office. And then any user that connects to that SSID, and again, you're using 802.1x and you're using two-factor authentication. So you have to use 802.1x authentication on that SSID and two-factor to make sure it's an authorized user. But those authorized users can then connect and tunnel back to the office and be able to access all of those local office resources through their device. So it's a really easy way to deploy remote users. We also, with this new update to Nebula that we just rolled out last week, have added a new security feature for our wireless access points. So one thing, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, is Nebula is for managing devices. These Nebula devices are managed individually. You don't have to have a whole network of Nebula devices, right? So if you just want to manage some of our APs, you can apply our APs onto your existing network, and you'll manage those through the cloud. If you add some Nebula switches, you'll manage those through the Nebula interface. But if you've got some old legacy switches, those you don't have to swap those out. Those can stay. You just can't manage them through Nebula. And it's very, very common, especially in some of these smaller business situations, where the gateway has been provided by whoever their ISP is, and it doesn't have UTM services, and they either don't want to or they can't replace that modem that was given to them by their ISP or that router that was given to them by their ISP. So, that's sitting there. You're using Nebula APs on their network. You're managing them through the cloud. And you'd like to provide UTM-like services to those wireless users, but you can't do it because you don't control their router. So this is something new we've done that's just for those types of situations where you can't add UTM to the gateway, but you want those UTM-type services. And that's something we're calling Connect and Protect. So basically, it's for your wireless users that are connecting to your Nebula managed access points, and it provides UTM-type services for them. So it has the ability, using what's called an IP reputation filter, to block known sources of spam, scanners, botnets, phishing websites, Windows Explorer exploits that are hosted in the cloud, proxy servers, all sorts of web attacks, denial of service attacks, etc., and block those for your wireless users so you can protect them. We've got two versions of this. We've got the CNP, Connect and Protect license, and we've got a Connect and Protect Plus. So both of them offer that IP reputation filter. The CNP Plus license adds bandwidth throttling based on application. So you can set rules to bandwidth throttle certain applications so they don't exceed or hog up your available airtime. And this license is done on a per AP basis, and not all of your APs need it. So in a situation where you've got an office, for instance, and you only want this sort of protection on your guest network, you only need to apply it to those APs that are providing coverage for your guest users, such as the lobby or the meeting room. Rather than having to buy one for each individual AP, it's only those APs where you want this protection that you have to buy the license for. So Connect and Protect is available on our NWA 1123 ACV3, our WAC 500, and our WAC 500H. CNP Plus is available on our 110 and 210 APs, and on the WAC 510D, 610D, our upcoming 630S, and our WAC 650S. We also now have the ability to do, I think it's a 3-month free trial if you want to test this out. If you simply log into the Nebula interface, you will see a pop-up offering the ability to do that as a free demo. We've also got instructions on how to set up the demo on our user forums. So that's it when it comes to Nebula here. If there are any questions, send them in using our question and answer interface. In the meantime here, we do have a live demo available. Simply go to nebula.zyxel.com. And there is a button there to go to the demo site, and you can log into a live site and see what's going on. It's a customer with 3 different hotels, so you can go in and see what's going on there. Play with it. You can reach out to your salesperson if you are a part of our partner program. We do have 60-day demo kits that are available that we can send you so you can try it out yourself in your lab. So give that a shot. And I do want to draw attention here to 2 things. We do have a YouTube channel called Zyxel America channel. That is where we post a lot of our case studies, success stories that we have. It's also where we archive these webinars. So if you've missed one of our webinars, you can go there, and it will normally appear within about 24 to 48 hours of the date of when the webinar was done. It's also one of those things where, maybe you want to share it with one of your coworkers. You can just point them there rather than wait for the next month when we do the webinar again live. And then feel free to connect to us on LinkedIn. Again, we are Zyxel US channel. And that concludes today's webinar. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask me. My email's up there. Feel free to reach out to me offline, seanr@zyxel.com. Next week, we are doing another webinar focused exclusively on the changes that were rolled out to Nebula this month. So we'll go through, and I've got screenshots of changes to the GUI interface and things like that. The primary change in the U.S. here has been the addition of the Connect and Protect license and support for infinite Wi-Fi. So infinite Wi-Fi is a third party that helps you monetize public access guest networks, hotels, shopping malls, airports, things like that. So with this new version of Nebula we've rolled out, we now integrate with their service. So if you're using their service, that's something for you. Now, if you run across our global or some other region's press release, there are some features in this new version of Nebula which are not going to be available in North America. The primary one being 5G routers. So in Europe, we have rolled out Nebula management and support for a number of 5G routers, both outdoor and desktop type ones. Unfortunately, we are not offering that in North America. In Europe, it's super cheap and super easy to roll out 5G products. They are universal. You simply add a SIM and you're good to go. Unfortunately, in the US, It requires a very expensive FCC certification, and then we have to go to each of the individual carriers, Verizon, AT&T, et cetera, and we have to pay to get added to their list of approved devices. And oftentimes, different providers have different non-compatible requirements or tweaks that have to be made to the settings. So unfortunately, at this time, we don't have any 5G Nebula managed devices here in North America. So I haven't gotten any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, guys. Please join my webinar next Thursday where we go through some of the new features that have recently been rolled out in Nebula. Thanks, everybody.